Well, we had incredibly heavy rain last night, even poured into our makeshift temporary home in our office. We got a leak there that, given the right wind and the right rain and the direction that it's being forced in, it will flood a little. We'll get water on the floor. So this morning I got to go into Taliban, which is not the an unusual thing, but I'm not able to go in on my bike. My bike is not designed for going in mud. It's just not. It has a slightly redesigned clip-on bars arrangement, which gives you a more aggressive look and attitude, posture, if you want, on the bike. It's got a nice fairing on it, which really attracted me, for whatever viewpoint I have on that. It looks like a beautiful bike, so I went along with that. Had a lot of advice about age, and it's not something that I didn't think about. I'm 83 years old, and if ever I talk about having an ache or pain, my wife, who is 50 years younger than me, quickly reminds me, in a kind of reverse "I told you so" attitude, hey, most Filipino men at that age are looking for a rocking chair, not a motorcycle. So that's the thing there. Had a comment that was put on this morning, telling me, at your age you should be thinking more about safety. And you know, there comes a point, it's different for everybody. One guy that I spoke to, who was already greatly overweight and not in good health, and had been on heavy medication for some years, said that everything went well for him until he was 70. Now, for other people it goes well until it's maybe 50, and then bills have to be paid. This is what I think about bills being paid on our physical condition. The more fun you had when you were younger, the bigger the bills are. So if you enjoyed going out and doing the booze, and staying out late, and having little sleep, and overworking and smoking, the booze thing is especially debilitating later in life, because it does vital organs. It gives them much more to handle than they should ever handle. I used to be in a band a long time ago, the Bob Miller band, if you're interested. Bob Miller and the Millermen. I was in that band for almost 2 years, and there was one man there that, to my amazement, because I'm particularly naive when it comes to drugs, but I think that he was on an hallucinogenic type of drug, that many of the Beatles songs were written during the inspiration time enjoyed in some of those drugs. And he used to look at me with glassy eyes and say, it's the only way to travel. Yes, I had another friend of mine who is heavily into alcohol, and I used to go around to his place sometimes for a visit, and he would offer me a beer, and I'd have a beer. Hot weather, I would quite enjoy a beer, not enjoy the taste of it, but it would come out of the refrigerator and it would be ice cold, and I would drink a beer. He would offer me a second beer, and I would say no, and in all seriousness I would tell him no. After one beer, if I try to have a second, my fingers go numb. And he laughed at that, not particularly nicely, as if I was the loser. And his wife gently reminded him, yes, wouldn't you love to have your fingers go numb after only 2 beers? So all bills come in at certain ages for certain people, and I hadn't intended that this would be about age, but it does come into it because I took on a Yamaha. It's an R15M or R15M. It's a large frame with a relatively small engine, but the engine is nicely refined and so far above what I was used to. I started biking when I was 18 years old, and I learned on a BSA, which for some of you old guys might remember the BSA. I learned on a 650 BSA Gold Flash, and that was quite a challenge, and it was quite fast. I remember doing, my mother liked motorcycles as well, and of course to me she seemed, back then in my 20s, it seemed like she was a million years old. Well, we think that, don't we, when we're very young. She still sat on the back with me and did over 90 miles an hour on some of the old British roads. So she was a gutsy lady. But I had to face up when I decided that I was going to get a bike. First of all, I went for a very sensible bike, and I quickly grew out of that. It just luckily happened that I couldn't go and get the bike just yet. So it gave me a couple of weeks in which to look at bikes and realize that I was still starry-eyed about motorcycles, if you like, and I'd already decided on a Suzuki. There was a Suzuki there, which was really very nice, but then I happened in on the Yamaha store down in Tubigon, and when I went in there, I just went in there, and when I saw the Yamaha, the R15M, that was it. I was starstruck. I couldn't see properly. My breathing got a little bit difficult, and I realise now, in retrospect, that I was a little bit like Toad in Toad of Toad Hall, in the Wind in the Willows, a book I read and loved a long time ago. Toad was famous for his latest fad, and he was out one day and a motor car passed him and he went completely blank. He was in a kind of a dream world. He was overcome by the desire to have a motor car, and so he did, and so it was with me when I saw this bike. It's not a dream bike for everyone. My friend Val has more than one motorcycle. I think he has probably has 3 motorcycles, which he mollycoddles in an air-conditioned garage that he keeps them in. And he has a Fat Boy. I think it's a Fat Boy, Harley Davidson, and he also has a BMW, and the BMW is a state-of-the-art thing. And his wife told me, his wife Carrie told me that he described the Harley Davidson as going from one bar to another, whereas the BMW was going from one place to another, which I thought was good. But I loved the BMW, and the Yamaha reminded me of that, and I wanted it. So, because we've been paying exorbitant prices on gas for the Raptor, which I'm in now and which I love, to me it's a super truck. I love it. It's a joy to drive, no matter time. Very often Beth will decide suddenly we get almost to going up our dirt road, and she'll find a reason for why we should be back in Talabon. And you know, I do it without complaint, because the Raptor is an absolute joy to drive. Well, we saved enough, even with the down payment was a hit, but then after that the payments, even with a full tank, a month, or a month and a tank and a half for a month, the Yamaha does 40 to 45 kilometers for 1 litre. Probably the Raptor might, my math is not good on converting from miles per gallon to miles per litre, or kilometers to litre, but I doubt that the Raptor does much more than I don't know, 5 or 6 or maybe 7 per litre, as opposed to nearly 45 per litre on the Raptor. And it gave me a chance to go back to riding a motorcycle, which I really loved. I've been a closet motorcyclist for some time now, and being able to justify financially to buy the motorcycle that I bought was wonderful. Now, two things, maybe not two things, but one thing that really convinced me that this was the bike, rather than the other bike that I could have bought, the Suzuki, still had a fairing, still a beautiful looking bike. The GXR S was the one that I was looking at, or the GXer was the one that I would have bought, because it was half the price of the Yamaha. But the Yamaha has ABS brakes. It has ABS brakes, and it has traction control, which for the Filipino roads I think are absolutely vital, especially the ABS brakes, because on the otherwise clear roads in Bohol you will come up against some of the following problems, if you like, to overcome. There are people sitting with their butt on the white line that is the edge of the road, and it's a narrow road, so in the Raptor certainly it can be a real problem. They walk along the road, and they walk on the road instead of on the side. There's no sidewalk. There are pigs sometimes loose on the road. There are often cows who are on a loose rope and can actually stand in the middle of the road, and people have to work around it. There are a multitude of dogs on the road at any given time, because there's no department, there's nowhere that they can go. There's no kennel or dog's home where they'll take them so that they can be adopted. There's no such thing as adopting a dog in the Philippines, because you can go almost to any place and they'll give you a beautiful puppy, because there's no fixing of the male dogs, and it's expensive to fix a female, so it never gets done. We're living in the province, and money is hard to come by. So having ABS brakes is good. Now the first time that I went for the bike, I realized it was going to be a challenge. I mean, I look at the bike, it's got a huge tank on it compared to the more ordinary road bikes, and it's got the advanced leaning forward stance, which is on the clip-ons, which I love the look of, and I'd never ridden a bike with clip-ons. I'd never ridden a bike with this huge tank, which has been inspired by the racing bikes. In fact, the Yamaha is, I saw on the reviews that I saw, some of the reviews went to the racetrack and you saw the guy leaning that bike right over and getting the knee down, and I thought, am I going to be able to do this? So it was a concern. But, I'm talking of butts, if you sit on your butt as age begins to take over, you can't let it take over. You have to do things which scare you a little, and you have to lift things which are a little bit heavy for you. And so when I knew that I was going to be taking on this bike, once I'd seen the bike and done my toe-to-toe haul reaction to it, I knew that I would never be satisfied with one of the undressed, they call them naked bikes. If they're naked, if they don't have any fairing on them, okay? So they're a much simpler looking bike. The handlebars are in a much more comfortable state for touring, everything that the Yamaha doesn't have. And so I actually started into a regime of a schedule, a routine of getting back into shape. Now, the worst thing for being in shape is owning a Raptor, because you love driving it, I guarantee, and so you sit for a lot of time. You might get some aches and pains in your upper body for turning the wheel, but it won't be excessive. So I decided that I would start exercising, and I started exercising. I upped on the vitamins. I started cutting down on the amount of rice that I had. I tried to go into a preparatory lifestyle that would fit me better for riding a bike. The real challenge is to ride it on the dirt path with mud patches every so often that you have to get through on this bike, which is just not designed for that kind of thing. It's not designed, I'm sure of being able to say, to go over slippery gravel roads, and that's what we have. We have dirt and gravel and mud, and that is for 2 miles down to the road. You can't buy, I did this mistake once before. I bought a dirt bike. I looked at the road down to the main road and I said, well, we should have a dirt bike. And somebody else at the same time as admonishing me about my age and now I shouldn't be riding, I should really be thinking about a rocking chair, I suppose. He said this: you should get an enduro bike, a dirt bike, because you're on the muddy. Now, that didn't work either, because the center of gravity of the off-road bikes, the dirt bikes, center of gravity is high, and if you are riding on that path and you have to stop and you put your foot down and there's nothing there, then you have to drop the bike. So this is not the best. It's not the best. If you're going at speed and you're blasting through everything, that's fine. But if you're going down to the bank, you're not going to get your enduro bike or your dirt bike out and just blast through all the mud and then go to the bank. It doesn't make sense. So the dirt bike becomes the same as any other bike. It becomes a mode of transport, and you expect to arrive at an appointment or a meeting or the bank or the supermarket in fairly clean condition. So it wasn't good enough to ride a dirt bike or to buy a dirt bike, and that's why I bought this. Eventually we will move on to a cement road, so this mud thing will not be a challenge. So now I just don't go out. I don't take the bike out when it's been raining very, very hard, because I know that there'll be water and mud and patches to go through, which it's not suited for. So that's my initial kind of look at riding the bike. When I did pick it up, I picked it up by myself. Beth would love to have come with me, but I wasn't prepared to ride with a passenger just yet. you got to do things that make you a little nervous, but at the same time you got to try to be sensible. So I went down there when the traffic was not high, and I made it out in the afternoon to a road which is not travelled very much. I only saw one or two. I didn't see any cars. I saw a police patrol car pass. I didn't see any other cars on the road at all, and it was a winding road, goes up into the mountains and then over the mountain and back down again, dear. And it was perfect practice. And when I got there, I practiced starting, stopping, starting, stopping as many times as it took to get comfortable with that. I practiced turning, I practiced leaning the bike over on the bends, I practiced changing gear. I got familiar with the bike, right? Now, the way that it turned out, the bike is so beautifully balanced, and my feet are almost flat on the floor, that that my thing about the dirt bike, where the center of gravity was so high, if it got past a certain angle and you were on it and you were on your tiptoe, there's no holding it. You've got to hop off, you've got to lay the bike down. And I'm sure that experienced bikers will understand this. So I got familiar before I came home. Before I tackled that dirt road that comes up from the road to the house and back down again, I was confident that I could handle the bike. So it's still a great learning process, and I am taking things very, very steadily, slowly. My average speed, I notice 50 to 60k an hour, and that way, with the ABS brakes and everything, I feel I can handle any emergency. Plus, I look way ahead in order to be ready for anything. Of course, it's a little bit like shark attack, isn't it? The shark that you see coming toward you is not the one that you're going to have to worry about. It's the one that you realize is biting on your butt without ever having been seen. So that's my situation now. So I'm going to click off on this one, and I'm going to keep the camera around on the other way so that I can show what the road is actually like when it's been heavy rain.